Morgan Griffith, great to have you, man.
Great to be with you.
So Joe Morrissey, we just had him on. He gave his legal analysis of the Cohen and Manafort situation. He's a Democrat, as you know, and I told him you were coming on. He says, tell my great friend Morgan Griffith hi. I served with him in the House, and he's a really great guy. So that's from Joe Morrissey, just so you know.
Well, I appreciate that. We always got along, even when we disagreed, and that's something we need to do more in this country is understand we may not agree, but that we can get along in spite of having political differences.
That would be a shocker, right, if we could finally do that. All right, Congressman, oh my goodness. The Democrats are saying that, look, Cohen made this plea, and there's a lot of Democrats saying today that if they take the House on November 6th and take the seats in January, which probably is a better than 50-50 chance right now, based on the new debacle going on in California with Duncan Hunter and Chris Collins in Buffalo. But they're saying that, look, Trump will get impeached within 90 days. True or false?
Well, I think the Democrats would impeach the president. I don't think there's any question about that. I do think there's a question as to whether or not the Senate would convict. I don't think they would.
I mean, they have to get 2/3 for a conviction. And
that's correct.
What would they impeach him on now? I mean, what would be impeached? They paid Stormy Daniels money? I mean, Joe Morrissey just said there's nothing illegal going on. And when we went down this path one time before with Senator John Edwards when he ran for president, I mean, he got acquitted. So, I mean, it's very difficult to prove that this money that Trump paid out of his pocket or Cohen paid it should have gone, through the campaign arm. I mean, it's just very difficult to prove. We've already got one case where it just, the prosecution spent months and months and months, and I think the jury was out in a day and said, no go. So, I mean, here's what Morrissey said. Manafort, nothing to do with candidate Trump, and Cohen, nothing really to do with candidate Trump either, other than paying people that he said was legal. So what would even their charges be here?
Well, for impeachment, they don't really have to have any charges. People forget that high crimes means basically anything that Congress determines is a high crime. And I would submit that there's probably at least a third of the Democrats would vote that Donald Trump's hair is a high crime. Mm-hmm. So, they don't have to have much of anything to do the impeachment. Now, to get a conviction, I think the Senate's going to have a much higher standard.
Right, and in order to do that, you would need 2/3 of senators,
that is
right,
correct,
to vote for a conviction, which is 66, right? Or 67.
I would submit you have to have 67 if 100 are seated.
Yeah, 67. So you'd need 67 out of 100 senators to vote for conviction on charges that are not, there are no charges. I mean, like I've said before, like you said, his hair, they can charge him with anything, and he's not going to get convicted. But look, that would tie the country up for months, right? I mean, remember the Clinton debacle? I mean, how long that went on, and it went on and on and on. And, you just can't get anything done because everybody's tied up with that. No one really knows what's going to happen.
But I think that's what the Democrats want. I think they feel that they win with chaos and confusion, and they don't want the president or the Republicans, whether we're in the minority or not, they don't want us to be able to achieve any successes. And so from their viewpoint, if you're not looking at the good of the country and you're only looking at the gain of your political party, that's a win for them.
Right, because at the end of the day, they'll tie things up, and then they can go into 2020 basically and stop the progress that the president has made on the economy by getting nothing done. Let me get your comment on this, and then I'm going to go to the tougher issues. Morgan, boy, you came on in a tough day. You picked a tough day to come on. Not by choice, right? Just by happenstance.
Just by
Wednesday
happenstance, yep.
I know, happenstance. Congressman Steve Stivers, Ohio, on Monday, defending the Republican tax cuts, and he argued for overhauling Medicare and Social Security to help further reduce the debt. But he's arguing the same thing that I'm doing and saying that over the next 2 years, that when the tax cuts take root, that the expansion of the economy is going to be such in creating new businesses and new jobs and new tax bases that the debt is actually going to come down, that revenue is going to exceed coming into the government what it was, even with the lower taxes, because of the expansion of the pie. Do you share that view?
Well, I don't know that I'm as bullish as Steve is, but I do think that we will see some of the red ink go away. And whether or not we get the government into a situation where we're running in the black, that's another story. But I do think that you'll see some reduction in the deficit. Then we have to tackle the debt. And so for everybody who doesn't follow this, the deficit is what we're spending this year. The debt's what we've accumulated over the years that we owe money on. So I think that we will see some reduction in the deficit. I don't know whether we will be able to tackle the debt. I hope we will. It's my goal that we would. But, that takes a consensus in both the House and the Senate. And too often that means that you have to make tough choices, and there are a lot of folks who are not ready to make those tough choices.
Well, we've got to make them at some point in time. We've been kicking the can down the road forever. But obviously right now the focus is keeping this tremendous economy going. And, man, you look at some of the numbers here, and they're stunning as far as African-American unemployment, all-time low, teenage unemployment. I mean, the number of kids that got jobs out of school or during the summer were all set record numbers. Women, most jobs ever recorded. Hispanics, lowest unemployment. If you look at the market right now, more jobs available than actually people applying. Former felons are getting jobs. Handicapped people are getting jobs. I mean, it's a phenomenal economy that we have. And the thing is it's only going to get better because the tax cuts haven't even hit. Other than a lower withholding, people haven't seen the money. They're not going to see it until the first quarter of 2018 when they're actually, and April, when they're actually filing their taxes. And, they're going to pay the government $2,000 less than they did. So that's when you're really going to get the windfall, right?
That is correct, and that's when the people will see it. Most corporations have accountants who've already filled them in, and that's why you see businesses across all kinds of different types of across the spectrum are investing in new equipment. They're increasing the number of employees. They're building new facilities. But, there are, like the one that I represent, Southside and Southwest Virginia and the Allegheny Highlands, that still have more workers than we have jobs. So anybody out there who's having trouble finding workers, we'd be glad to help you open up a plant in Southwest Virginia, Southside Virginia, or the Allegheny Highlands. A little plug there, sorry.
There is so much opportunity now. I mean, all you do is go back just to, everybody remembers 2008, 9, and 10, how tight things were and how scary it was for so many people. And now the economy just booming. And if the Republicans are able to keep on this message and keep it going, with all this going on, I still believe you're going to be able to hang on to the House. Let's get to Duncan Hunter, Congressman. And I know that this is tough when it's a colleague of yours, but, I've got a lot of listeners that $179,000 to them and to me, I mean, that's a lot of money, even if you have two residences. It's like probably 2 or 3 times what most of my listeners make. And so you look at a guy like Duncan Hunter and you look at the charges the Department of Justice brought against this guy in scamming his campaign account for trips and his lifestyle and his wife, a campaign credit card. And, I mean, he grew up in a political family. I mean, what happens when these people get to Washington? I mean, is it just they get drunk with power or they think they're better than everybody else? I mean, you got Chris Collins doing insider trading. I mean, a guy that, I was in his district 6 months ago for a week traveling around to Buffalo and Rochester. His constituents are broke. And then you look at, he's calling up his son to save $700,000. Average people don't have access to this. What's the deal here?
I don't know. I can't explain it. I mean, and of course, neither of them have been convicted, and we have to see what the final facts are. But they look bad.
Of course,
they certainly appear to be serious problems, and I just don't understand it. I mean, of course, that's part of the good thing about not having money. I make a good salary, but I didn't grow up with money, and so my wife and I made the decision that we when I went to Congress because we didn't want to have anybody accusing us of doing something that wasn't appropriate. So we cashed in our $6,000 worth of stock, and that was our big, publicly traded stock investment, and it just wasn't a big deal for us. But for a lot of these people, I guess they've done that. I'm talking about the stock deals. They've been doing that all their lives, and Chris Collins has had a lot of wins in the business world, and I don't know what happened there. Duncan Hunter's a different situation. If the allegations are true and he was taking vacations, I mean, I worry about whether or not I'm, appropriately charging the gas to, my personal account or my campaign account. And here's a guy apparently, if the allegations are true, going off to Italy and, trying to parlay that somehow into a campaign stop. That's a hard one to sell. Because you do some things in the United States where you travel to raise money or do something, but I've never heard of anybody doing a political stop for U.S. congressional seat out of in Europe. Or Asia. I've just never heard of that before. And that's clearly disturbing, but I don't understand it, so I can't explain it.
It's a tough one to defend, but I'm going to go back to what you said earlier, and I agree with this 100%. Because there is a humility that goes with living on a tight budget. And for those of us that just, don't live in that world, don't have a lot of money, have to really think about, what we're doing on a weekend and how to get from point A to point B from, Monday to Wednesday. It's a very different perspective on life than you have when you have a lot of money and things are free and easy. And so I think Duncan Hunter and a lot of these people fall into this. I mean, we had the whole problem. I mean, Jesse Jackson Jr. went to prison over it. I mean, went to jail over this thing. Same thing. And after a while, you just say to yourself, I mean, you're going to get, if you break the rules, you're going to get nailed. So, why do you do it? Just follow the rules. And if $179,000 isn't enough money, I get it. You got kids in college and you got to have 2 residences. And if it's not enough money, then can't you find something else to do? I mean, is that not a fair question for people that when they look at $180,000 with the government, it looks like a lot of money to average working folks? I mean, isn't it a legitimate question to say, if it isn't enough money, why don't you go find something else to do?
Well, and that's, but every situation like this is a little bit different because I know with the Collins case, he already had plenty of money, so the salary wasn't an issue for him. And I don't know what happened, but apparently he didn't sell any stock, according to the allegations. But he said something to his son, and his son and the son's future father-in-law both sold the stock. And you just have to wonder, what was he thinking? And was it just a slip of the tongue? But it was a very expensive slip of the tongue.
He called his son so his family could save that $775,000, his family and friends, and that's what they did. So when you pick up the phone, you're of sound mind and body, you know what you're doing. And he had access to information no one else had. And sometimes in life, you just got to swallow it, okay? It is what it is. Because if he didn't have the info, here's the thing. If that CEO didn't text him, he wouldn't have had the information. He wouldn't have made the call. I didn't get the text, right? My colleagues here in the studio, they didn't get a text, right? He got a text. So he got a text because of his position, and then he violated the trust with that position. Not good. Now, we're with Morgan Griffith, Congressman, 9th District, Virginia. That's in the Southwest Virginia area, and he is heavily favored for re-election, although he's taking nothing for granted. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, trucking the truth across America. I've only got 2 more minutes. The Cohen plea. You're a lawyer. What did you make of this whole thing? 2 minutes.
Well, I don't know what he's been promised. I don't know what's going on, but, there are all kinds of examples in history and in legal cases where somebody does something because they think a third party or another person wants them to do it, and they go off on their own and they take measures in their own hands. All we have to do is think about Henry II and Thomas Becket, where Henry II is frustrated and says, can't somebody do something about Becket? And 4 of his knights go off and kill Becket. Henry never meant for him to be killed, maybe, taken into custody or something, but most historians agree that it wasn't really his intent to have his former friend executed, but that's what his friends thought he wanted done, and they did it. So it'll be interesting to see how the facts play out.
Okay, we're going to keep following this. What is the number one thing, Congressman, outside of getting reelected that you're working on right now?
Well, I'm working on regulations that will help jobs, pushing back on some EPA regulations where the EPA requires you to change everything in a factory if you change one little thing, even if you're making that one thing better. And so factories and companies can't do that. They can't swallow the apple whole. I'm trying to make it so they can take one bite at a time out of the apple and improve the environment and increase efficiency at the same time.
All right. Sounds like you're working hard on that, but jobs are up. I tell you what, the Trump economy, based on the tax cuts and cutting regulations, is off the charts, and it's only going to get better. I'm telling you, we're going to get 4.5% growth or higher in the third quarter. It's only getting better. John Fredericks Radio Network. Congressman, it's always an honor to have you on, sir. Thank you so much. Enjoy your insight. More information, go to griffith.house.gov, griffith.house.gov. Congressman, thanks for being with us.